positions. So, and then once we hit that area, our daily target would be the 102.81 area. Now, a longer term trader would hold that position and look for a move back towards the bottom of that range in that 99.35 area, which I've identified. So for now, our medium term crossover from Vantage Point is pointing to the downside. Very, very interesting when we're looking at from this perspective. Now, going into the British pound US dollar. British pound US dollar is a little more complex of a picture. However, the key thing what I want to point out with the British pound is we are in an uptrend on this. We have our medium-term crossover has taken place here. You can remember that I was putting out the buy signals around that 144, 140, anywhere between 143.60 and 144.80 was a premium buy area on the British pound US dollar. Now, what I want to point out here is that the short-term crossover from Vantage Point on the British pound US dollar is to the downside. Is Vantage Point saying that we want to sell this? Vantage Point is saying no such thing. What it is saying is that in the short term it's going to move lower, but in the long term, so if we hit the long-term crossover right here and hit apply, we can see that we have a very clear move to the actual upside. So now that we've identified that we only want to buy this thing on dips, we do not want to short it. Even though your scalpers can come in and take a few pips selling this thing, the same thing that happened back down in that 104, 144.85 area where the scalpers were trying to pick up 30, 40, 50 pips, they ended up getting absolutely slaughtered on that trade when it shot up to the 152 area. So again, if you take a trade against the Vantage Point software, specifically when you have the triple EMA crossover like this, if you trade against this, you have a less than 50% chance of being profitable. So should we be selling this, or should we be buying it based on this crossover? We should only be buying it. So what we want to do is we can identify the 18-day predicted moving average comes in at 150.09, 151.08, 151.23 with a close of 150.79. This, in my opinion, represents a premium buy on the British pound US dollar. Any move towards this 150 level. Now, what I want to also point out here, we're looking at pattern recognition. What has the pound dollar been doing from a week-to-week basis? This is where paying attention to detail and staying away from those short-term indicators can really pay off. We can see that last Friday we had the same thing. We had a strong day. We went into a long weekend. What we can take from this is we can see profit taking. The next day the neural index went to the down on the Monday, but in actual fact it did go down, but then it immediately recovered again in this 150 area. We then had the rest of the week in an uptrend, hitting up into the 152.40 range again on numerous days. So again, pointing out why we should only be buying on dips. Stay away from the short-term stuff, stick with your more medium and longer term outlook, and right now it certainly appears based on the medium, the long term, and the triple EMA crossover that the Vantage Point is suggesting the British pound US dollar is going to move higher, I should say. So we've identified the 18-day predicted moving average at the 150 level. So really on a pullback towards the 150.10, 150.25, we want to use that to get into our buy, reset our long positions, because those same big players that took profit on Thursday and Friday, which drove the pound dollar lower, are now looking to re-enter those exact same trades again. So this is what I'm warning you of with these short-term indicators, the short-term crossover from Vantage Point, the short-term predicted differences. They're giving us an indication that the market's going to go lower, but the medium and the long-term indicators from Vantage Point are clearly telling us to only buy this thing. So very important to remember that. Looking at the Australia US dollar here, again, we've got our medium-term crossover. We don't have the triple EMA crossover up this week. We want to point out what's actually going on here. We have the medium-term crossover. Everything is pointing higher on the Aussie US dollar. They had a very strong employment report this week. That should breathe some life into the Aussie dollar for at least a couple of more weeks. With rate hike expectations, et cetera, et cetera. Commodities are starting to come around a bit. Everything looks pretty good there. So our predicted true strength indicator from Vantage Point has just crossed over right at the zero line. Perfect area for a trending move. So again, looking at the Aussie US dollar to begin the week, Do we want to buy it or do we want to sell it? Looking at the US dollar index, looking at these other factors that are coming into play here, again, we only want to buy this thing on dips. So what have we got to start the week? We're going to look at the daily report using the Australia US dollar daily report from Vantage Point. 87.22, 88.02. Neural index is up. Predicted medium, short, medium, and long-term differences all positive. This one here is the one I really like. The long-term difference has gone from negative 31 to positive 21. So even in the long-term outlook from Vantage Point is suggesting it's going to go higher. We've closed the week at 87.71, 87.73 the previous day. Everything looks very good there. So again, we're looking for a pullback. We want to identify, some key areas. Our medium-term crossover is hit. So looking at this, we can see that these candlesticks were breaching. The blue line, by the way, here is the predicted moving average from Vantage Point. The black line is a simple moving average. So we can see that the market continually comes down and bounces off the predicted moving average from Vantage Point. That comes in right now at 86.69, so we may see a little deeper pullback than the 87 level, and if it does, terrific. That just gives us a better opportunity to buy it. So again, keeping things as simple as we can. When the blue line crosses the black line and all of our other indicators from the medium and longer term perspective support, we're looking to get into buy positions. We're looking here now at the yen futures contracts. We can see that they're again under pressure from the medium term perspective, but a longer term are not really supportive of that. So we're trying to get again to get a clean signal on the yen, and it's very difficult. If we look at this, we can see the long term still not willing to put out that sell signal on the yen futures contract. So again, we want to be very cautious if trading counter trend positions on that dollar yen based on the futures contracts and what's happening on the US dollar. Now looking at the Euro FX futures contracts, we can see here very interesting that's happening again here. I took a bit of heat again the other week when I was starting to put out those buy signals on the Euro US dollar, but what I had said based on the US dollar index, what I saw happening with crude oil, the false break that I suspected was happening on crude oil, that's exactly what happened. I suggested that we should be getting into long positions. Again, the Euro US clearly shot out of that 122 level, just below that range area. I'll get into the Euro US in a moment here, but primarily the Euro FX futures contracts are also a very good driver, using that up against the US dollar index, against the Euro US, against some of the other currency pairs. Now, looking at the US Swiss franc, the US Swiss franc is a derivative of the Euro Swiss franc, and again, the Euro US. That's what the US Swiss franc currency pair is. It is not a major currency pair. I think I've said this before, but I'll remind everybody. So we've got this crossover from Vantage Point in this 116 level. The medium-term crossover, again, is not showing any signs of relief here yet for the US dollar. So we're looking, there's a number of things that concern me though. The predicted true strength indicator from Vantage Point hitting not record lows, but it's hitting extreme lows on this indicator. Predicted MACD, same thing, hitting the negative 200 level. Predicted medium and long-term differences also. This thing is getting oversold, but again, these currencies can be overbought and oversold for weeks and even months before the actual corrective move happens. So we have to be careful about only trading off an overbought or oversold signal, because the market may not, the market has on numerous occasions completely ignored overbought and oversold signals. So we're looking for an actual